It begins in silence. Not the kind that soothes, but the kind that swallows sound, where even the heartbeat feels like an echo too loud for the room. That's where Daniel found himself most days, sitting by the window of his small apartment, staring at nothing, watching the light fade as if the sun itself had given up trying to reach him. To anyone else, Daniel's life looked ordinary. He worked from home, sent polite emails, paid his bills. But behind every routine, every small act of functioning, there was a weight. An invisible fog pressing against his chest. He couldn't remember when it began. Maybe it wasn't a single day, but a slow leaking of color from his world, until everything turned gray, and he couldn't tell if he was tired, or if he just didn't care anymore. Every morning, the same ritual: wake up, stare at the ceiling, and negotiate with the thought of getting out of bed. There was always a voice whispering, "Why bother?" It wasn't loud or dramatic, it was casual, convincing, like a friend stating a simple truth. Depression rarely screams, it murmurs, softly enough that you start to believe it's your own voice. He used to love photography. There was something magical about catching light in a frame, freezing moments that felt alive. But now, the camera gathered dust on his shelf, untouched. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had built his life around capturing light, and now he couldn't find any of it inside himself. One afternoon, his sister called. Her voice was bright, cheerful, full of life. "You should come over, Dan. You sound distant." He promised he would. He never did. He told her work was too busy. The truth was, he didn't have the energy to pretend to be okay for an entire evening. Even smiling felt like lifting weights underwater. Days blurred. Meals were forgotten. The clock lost meaning. But what haunted Daniel most wasn't sadness, it was numbness. The absence of feeling. When people imagine depression, they picture tears, breakdowns, desperation. But the reality is quieter. It's sitting in a room, staring at your hands, and realizing you feel nothing at all, not love, not hate, not even fear. The breaking point came unexpectedly. It was a Tuesday, the kind of gray, rainy day that mirrored his inner world too perfectly. He was scrolling through his old photos, trying to delete some to free up storage, when he stumbled upon a picture from 3 years ago. It was him, standing by the coast, wind in his hair, eyes bright, smiling like the world was still wide open. For a moment, he didn't recognize himself. It felt like looking at a stranger. Something inside cracked. He dropped the phone, pressed his hands to his face, and finally, after months of numb silence, he cried. It wasn't loud or cinematic. It was a quiet release, like air escaping from a punctured lung. The tears didn't fix anything, but they reminded him he could still feel. And in that small, fragile moment, it was enough. That night, Daniel made a decision, not a grand one, just a quiet act of rebellion against the darkness. He would see a therapist. He didn't believe it would help, not yet. But the thought of talking, of being heard, felt like a lifeline. Therapy wasn't magic. It was hard, raw work. Weeks went by where he sat in silence, shrugging when asked how he felt. But slowly, words began to form. He spoke about his father's silence, his fear of failure, his shame for feeling weak. And as he spoke, he began to see that depression wasn't just sadness, it was unprocessed pain. A buildup of years spent holding in everything he didn't want to burden others with. He learned that the human mind has a strange defense mechanism. When emotions become too heavy to bear, it shuts them off entirely. What feels like apathy is often the mind's last attempt at survival. Sadness, he realized, isn't the enemy. It's a message, a signal that something deep inside needs attention. Months later, Daniel found himself outside at dawn. The sky was pale gold, the air cool and still. He lifted his camera, hesitated, then pressed the shutter. For the first time in years, the world looked alive. He wasn't cured. The fog still came and went. But he understood now, healing isn't about never feeling sad again. It's about learning to sit with the sadness without letting it consume you. He started visiting his sister again. The first time, she hugged him longer than usual, whispering, "It's good to see you." He smiled, genuinely this time. And as they sat talking, he realized something powerful: he wasn't alone. He never had been. Depression had just convinced him he was. Some days, the darkness still returned. But Daniel no longer ran from it. He would sit quietly, acknowledge it, and remind himself, this feeling will pass. It always does. Slowly, he rebuilt his life, not into what it once was, but into something real, something honest. The truth is, inside every depressed mind, there's not just pain, there's also depth, empathy, and quiet strength. Sadness, when understood, can be a teacher. It strips away illusions, revealing who we are beneath the noise. And sometimes, that's the beginning of real freedom. Psych Truth Zone. Sadness is not a defect, it's data. It's your mind's way of saying, something needs to change. We often mistake numbness for weakness, but it's the body's way of surviving what it can't yet process. The next time you find yourself lost in that gray space, remember, you are not broken. You are in repair. Depression doesn't mean the absence of hope. It means hope has gone quiet, waiting for you to find it again. And you will.